Manchakalpatturudischa kripasinudeva patitam bhavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivedanta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Itarita Chayena Bhakti Bhavena Chaitasadeva Shastra Puranani Janani Tani Sarvashaha. For those who study the Bhagavad Gita as it is with great faith and devotion, the essence of all Vedic knowledge is revealed. Hare Krishna. So this evening, as part of this initiation fire sacrifice program, we shall discuss the Bhagavad Gita, text 13 of chapter 4. The chapter is called Transcendental Knowledge, and text 13 is a very well-known verse which will help us to understand the meaning of what we're seeing here today. So the verse reads, Chaturvanyam maya shrishtam gunakarma vibhagashaha tusya kartaram api mam vidi akartaram avyayam. So we can learn what this means together. To kind of repeat. Chaturvanyam. Chaturvanyam. The four divisions of human society.
The four divisions of human society.
Maya.
Maya.
By me.
By me.
Shrishtam.
Shrishtam.
Created.
Created.
Guna.
Guna.
Of quality.
Of quality.
Karma.
Karma.
And work.
And work.
Vibhagashaha.
Vibhagashaha.
In terms of division.
In terms of division.
Tasya.
Tasya.
Of that. Kartaram.
Kartaram.
The Father.
The Father.
Api.
Api.
Although.
Although.
Mam.
Mam.
Me.
Me.
Vidhi.
Vidhi.
You may know.
You may know.
Akartaram.
Akartaram.
As the non-doer.
As the non-doer.
Avyayam.
Avyayam.
Unchangeable.
Unchangeable.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. According to the three modes of material nature and the work associated with them, the four divisions of human society are created by me. And although I am the although I am the creator of this system, you should know that I am yet the non-doer, being unchangeable. Purport. The Lord is the creator of everything. Everything is born of Him. Everything is sustained by Him, and everything after annihilation rests in Him. He is therefore the creator of the four divisions of the social order, beginning with the intelligent class of men, technically called Brahmanas, due to their being situated in the mode of goodness. Next is the administrative class, technically called the Kshatriyas, due to their being situated in the mode of passion. The mercantile men, called the Vaishyas, are situated in the mixed modes of passion and ignorance, and the Shudras, or laborer class, are situated in the ignorant mode of material nature. In spite of His creating the four divisions of human society, Lord Krishna does not belong to any of these divisions, because He is not one of the conditioned souls, a section of whom form human society. Human society is similar to any other animal society, but to elevate men from the animal status, the above-mentioned divisions are created by the Lord for the systematic development of Krishna consciousness. The tendency of a particular man toward work is determined by the modes of material nature which he has acquired. Such symptoms of life, according to the different modes of material nature, are described in the 18th chapter of this book. A person in Krishna consciousness, however, is above even the Brahmanas, Although Brahmanas by quality are supposed to know about Brahman, the supreme absolute truth, most of them approach only the impersonal Brahman manifestation of Lord Krishna. But a man who transcends the limited knowledge of a Brahmana and teaches the knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Lord Krishna becomes a person in Krishna consciousness, or in other words, a Vaishnava. Krishna consciousness includes knowledge of all different plenary expansions of Krishna, namely Ram, Nrsimha, Varaha, etc. And as Krishna is transcendental to this system of the four divisions of human society, a person in Krishna consciousness is also transcendental to all divisions of human society, whether we consider the divisions of community, nation, or species. Again, Chaturvanya Maya Shrishtam Guna Karma Vibhagasha Tasya Kartaram Avhimam Vidhi Akartaram Avyayam. According to the three modes of material nature and the work associated with them, the four divisions of human society are created by me. And although I am the creator of this system, you should know that I am yet the non-doer, being unchangeable. Mukam karoti vachalam madhumanayate kripataram vande Sri Guru Nityananda. So what is being described here is called Daivi Varnashram Dharma. You may have heard the term Varna Ashram Dharma. Daivi Varna Ashram. Daivi means Deva or God, Krishna. Because Krishna says Maya Shrishtam. Chaturvanyam Maya Shrishtam. I give, I create this system of four Varnas and four Ashramas. The Varna Ashram Dharma system is a system, the Vedic system, of occupation and education. Varna refers to occupation. There are four Varnas, as we have heard: the Brahmanas, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Shudras. And there are also four levels of education within the Brahmana. They're fully manifest in the Brahmana order, all four. And these are Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyasa. So this Daivi Varnashram system is a system given by Lord Krishna to help those human beings who are sukrita, who are pious. Sukrita means there is a tendency in them to perform sukrita, that means good work, good deeds. They're good souls. And we should note that this class of sukrita is not determined by janma, by birth. Although some people take Varnashram Dharma to be equivalent to what is actually Jati Vyavastha. There's something called Jati Vyavastha, or caste system. But they're not actually equivalent. Because here in this verse, we don't find the word janma mentioned. Chaturvanya Maya Shrishtam Guna Karma Vibhagasha. According to the quality of work, that is how the members of the Daivi Varnashram system are known, according to how they're working. So basically their work is sukrita. It is pious, it is good, it is directed towards the Supreme Lord. In the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna speaks of four classes of pious persons. What is that? Chaturvidam bhajante mam. They have a tendency to serve me. Bhajante mam. And therefore they are known as sukrita because of that tendency. And these four are those who are artha, they are distressed, those who are jignanshu, who have some curiosity to know what is God, those who are artha arthati, those who are in need of money or desirous of material acquisition, and finally those who are jnani, those who are philosophical. Those who are actually searching out the absolute truth, who put everything else aside, all other concerns, and simply focus on attaining the supreme absolute truth. So these four are sukrita. They're pious. But they're also still within the modes of nature. Sattva guna, raja guna, tamo guna. Because, now what does this mean? In practical terms, of course the explanation, the philosophy of the modes of material nature is very extensive. There are whole chapters of Bhagavad Gita dedicated to that. But just in very practical terms that we can all understand in terms of our present existence, we learn from Srimad Bhagavatam that the mind, everybody knows, I'm sure, what the mind is. We all have a mind. So the mind is the product of the mode of goodness. When the mind is at peace, when the mind is tranquil, then we experience in the mind the sattva guna. Unfortunately, in this present age, Kali Yuga, the mind is not very often tranquil. But we see when we chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, when we cultivate spiritual consciousness by an authorized process, we can see the mind becoming tranquil. So that is the sattva guna. That is the mode of goodness. And the senses, our senses, there are 10 senses. 10 senses means twofold division of 5 senses each, in each division. There are knowledge, acquiring senses, and the active senses. Knowledge acquiring senses means senses like the eyes and the ears, for instance, which are simply receiving information. Active senses mean senses like the hand and the leg, which do work. Karnendriya. Jnanendriya, karnendriya. So these senses are products of the mode of passion, because they are always demanding engagement. And then the sense objects. The objects of the senses actually begins with the physical structure of this body. Because actually when we say senses, the indriyas, they are subtle. This term indriya in the Vedic scriptures does not exactly correspond, for instance, eye, the power of sight, does not correspond with this jelly ball in the skull. That is just the portal through which the sense, the seeing sense functions. So the senses are subtle, they're extensions of the mind actually. But the sense objects, they begin with this body itself, this physical body. And then, of course, the bodies of others who we perceive and interact with, and the physical matter of the world around us. So this, jada, this dead matter, beginning with this body itself, this is all produced out of the mode of ignorance, tamo guna. So if we consider this, we see how we are bound up in our present existence by the modes of nature. We are obliged in this body to interact with these modes. So one who is conditioned by the modes of nature, who falls under this fourfold category of Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, is one who is endeavoring to pacify either the mind or the senses, or even the objects of the senses. Because his mind is demanding knowledge, for instance, his senses are demanding facility in the form of wealth. These sense objects are causing him distress. He's struggling to relieve that distress. So in this way, all living entities are struggling. This is Lord Krishna's statement. Mama aivam sajiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana mana krishtani priyani kritistani krishti. First he says, actually, we have nothing to do in our original state with material nature. Mama aivam, he says. The jiva bhuta is part of me. Mama aivam, my part and parcel. Jiva bhuta sanatana. So as such, the jiva is eternal, is spiritual, just as we have heard in the purport, verse and purport, in the 4th chapter, where Krishna says, although I am the creator, tattvana maya shrishtam, I have nothing to do with this creation. I do not come under its control. I am transcendental to it. So similarly, in the original state of the soul, he also has nothing to do with the modes of nature. He's also transcendental. But, unfortunately, avritam jnanam etena jnaninas nityamara. Although we are jnani, we are situated in jnana, in spiritual knowledge, in our original state, that knowledge has been covered, like the sunlight becomes covered by a cloud. In reality, the sun itself is never covered by a cloud. Because what is the size of the sun compared to a cloud? The sun is huge. These earthly clouds are so insignificant. But the sunlight which reaches our eyes, that can be blocked by a cloud. And thus we may think that the sun is covered. We may think that there is no sun today. That's a common statement. There is no sun today. So in the same way, people, because their knowledge is covered by maya, by illusion, they cannot perceive their very self, the soul, that is covered. So, in this covered state, manakshashtani indriyani prakritistani karshati, then we struggle with the modes of nature, manifested, as I've explained, as mind, senses, and sense objects. We struggle with them, trying to pacify them. And they're demanding, like little dictators, little Hitlers, demanding, satisfy me. And so this is the cause of our material entanglement here. That we are struggling within the material nature, turning the wheel of karma, the wheel of samsara, trying to pacify our mind, our senses, and the sense objects. In other words, the triguna, the three modes of material nature. So, to help the conditioned soul, the ignorant soul who has forgotten himself, to help him come out of this struggle, Lord Krishna has manifested by his mercy this Daini Varna Ashram system. So that according to the degree of our entanglement in mind, senses, sense objects, we can gradually engage ourselves in Krishna's service by coming up to this Chaturvarna, Shudra, Vaishya, Kshatriya, Brahmana. This one situation in these varnas is determined by, actually we should say this, that these engagements in the varnas, what are they really? They're all ways of serving Krishna. Even to be Shudra, simple laborer, one can do this for Krishna. To be Vaishya, Vaishya means mercantile businessman, one can do this for Krishna. Administrator, Kshatriya, one can do this for Krishna. These are all, and certainly Brahman. So these are all opportunities of Bhakti Yoga, opportunities to serve Krishna. And so that's the Varna side. Then the ashram side, Srila Prabhupada says the ashrams are meant to give us education, or knowledge, and also morality. These two things, or detachment. Education, vidya, and detachment, vairagya. So we see three things. In the varnas, there's the opportunity for bhakti yoga. And in the ashram, where we learn, we have the opportunity to become established in vidya, knowledge, and vairagya, renunciation. This vairagya, vidya, knowledge, and renunciation, it's actually comes to a very simple conclusion, as Srila Prabhupada always explained, citing one verse from the great politician, Chanakya Pandit, who said that one who sees other men's wives or other women as, besides his own wife, as mother, and one who sees others' property as something not to be touched, untouchable, and one who treats other living beings, all other living beings as he would have himself treated, that is a person of knowledge. That is perfect vairagya, vidya. So when these three things, vairagya, vidya, and bhakti yoga, are fully developed, fully manifested in a person, then that person, his struggle with material nature stops. Vairagya, vidya, nija, bhakti yoga. This Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has come to give us in this dark age of Kali. The traditional and ancient varnashram dharma system has fallen down in this age. When one goes to India, one no longer sees Vedic culture. One sees an imported culture, which has been brought in, especially from England and other places. The modern Indian culture is a mixture of different foreign influences. And there is, of the original Vedic culture, there's very little left to be seen. But that does not mean that the people of India or anywhere else do not have the opportunity to overcome the bondage of the modes of nature and come to the transcendental platform of pure devotion to Krishna, pure devotional service to Krishna. No, because Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given us the process. Vairagya, vidya, nija, bhakti. These three are the foundation of varna ashram dharma. So in this process of Krishna consciousness, as you see practiced here in the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, the devotees are becoming schooled in bhakti yoga, in occupation of service to Krishna, just as you see in the center. There's so many ways in which devotees engage themselves, not in earning money for gratifying their senses or their minds, but for satisfying Krishna. This is the only engagement. And devotees are becoming schooled in vidya, Vedic knowledge, and schooled in renunciation. So to become perfectly established in vairagya, vidya, and bhakti yoga, one must accept spiritual master. Krishna consciousness begins with shraddha, with faith. Just as I suppose everyone here, including certainly the devotees, but also the guests, are here because of some faith in what we do here. Otherwise, why would you be here? If you didn't have some faith, or at least beginning interest, that's called shraddha, just a beginning interest in Krishna consciousness and chanting Hare Krishna. So adau shraddha, it all begins here. But that faith must be cultivated. Some religionists, they say everything is by faith alone. But Sri Rupa Goswami said, adau shraddha, everything begins with faith. But that faith must be developed. So how is it developed? As you're doing here, sadhusanga, to come into the association of devotees. And then what? Bhajana Kriya. Bhajana Kriya means to take up the regular activity, sadhana bhakti, regular activities of devotional service. And this one should do under the direction of a spiritual master. And just like when one enrolls in school, one must accept a teacher. How can you master the subject unless you have a teacher who is conducting you through the studies, who's guiding you, testing you, but not only testing you, but helping you, giving you that assistance that you need, that encouragement that you need to go forward even in the face of adversity. So, Bhajana Kriya particularly means to accept spiritual master and to accept the discipline. Srila Prabhupada explained that disciple, spiritual master is of course guru, and disciple is called shishya. And this term shishya is derived from the term shabdhatu, which means discipline. So to become shishya, disciple, one has to accept discipline. So the discipline in this Krishna consciousness movement is basically fourfold vow of no meat eating, no illicit sex, no gambling, no intoxication. This is on the side of the vow of negating sinful activities. Then on the positive side, there is the vow to chant daily 16 rounds of Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Now, in order for the disciple to progress in this chanting beyond the stage, then to stage of Bhajana Kriya, then to Anartana Vritti, that means to cleanse the heart of all impurities, and Nishta, firm faith, and then Ruchi, taste, positive transcendental taste for the holy name, Asakti, attachment to the holy name, Bhava, ecstasy, transcendental ecstasy, and finally Prema, pure love of Krishna. So in order for us to progress to the stage of pure love of Krishna, one must practice at the sadhana stage, practice stage. One must practice this chanting offenses to the holy name of the Lord. So the first is sadhuninda, to blaspheme devotees, to speak critically of devotees who have dedicated their lives to the spreading of the mission of Krishna consciousness. So Vaishnava does not like to, the devotee of the Lord does not like to criticize anyone. Sometimes we have to point out discrepancies. Just like in preaching. When we preach, when we present the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, sometimes we are obliged to show that because the general society is not following the principles of Krishna consciousness, therefore the general society is going to hell. Sometimes we have to speak like that. Giving examples, graphic examples. So, but this is not criticism, this is not fault finding. We're not getting some inner gratification from it, thinking ourselves superior than everyone else. But for preaching, we must point out discrepancies. We must discriminate between Maya and Krishna. Must be done. So Vaishnava, otherwise, he does not engage in criticism or fault finding, especially not of devotees of the Lord. Actually, not anyone. Srila Prabhupada said, a Vaishnava respects even the ant. Because every form of life, as we were hearing this morning in Srimad Bhagavatam class, every form of life is a temple of God. God, Vishnu, dwells within the hearts of all creatures. And especially, he dwells within the heart of the Vaishnava, because the Vaishnava is servant. So it is a great offense, sudden to blaspheme, to criticize the devotees. This checks our advancement. The next offense is to consider the names of demigods like Brahma, Shiva, Durga to be equal to or independent of the chanting of the holy name of Lord Vishnu, Lord Krishna, because Krishna is the absolute truth. As in Bhagavad Gita in the 11th chapter, we find there the universal form is revealed, Vishvarupa Swarupa. And within the universal form of Lord Krishna, Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Lord Indra, all the demigods are situated as his parts and parcels. So there are those who, because they're devious by nature, deviating from the Vedic scriptures, they try to put forward Brahma or Shiva or some other deva as being equal to or independent of Krishna, and they say that you chant Krishna Krishna, we chant Shiva Shiva, it's the same. We'll achieve the same goal. But that is not the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita or any other authorized Vedic scripture. So this is another offense. Then the third offense is Guru Avegya, to disrespect the order of Guru. So just as here, the disciples will vow to follow the four regulative principles. So if that vow is broken, that is Guru Avegya, disrespect of the spiritual master. The next offense is Shruti Shastra Ninda, to blaspheme the Vedic scriptures, to find faults in Vedic knowledge. Sometimes it appears that there is some discrepancy between one Vedic text and another, or there is a discrepancy between what we read in the scriptures and what people perceive in the outside world. So one has to appeal to Vedic authority. Again, one has to go to spiritual master, one who sees everything through Shastra Shakshut, through the eyes of knowledge, through the eyes of Shastra. And then these discrepancies can be cleared up. If we conclude on the basis of our imperfect understanding that the Vedas are wrong, the Vedas, they may have been okay for 5,000 years ago, but now these books are obsolete. If this is our conclusion, that is a great offense. One cannot make progress in Krishna consciousness. The next offense is to offer some interpretation of the chanting of the holy name of the Lord. Just like someone said, I won't mention who, very well-known so-called spiritual authority in India. He said, Krishna means black, which is one way of explaining the word Krishna. That is one meaning, black. Krishna means black, and black means unknown. So therefore, God is unknown. We cannot say who or what God is. So this is an offense, aparad, offering some wrong interpretation of Harinam, holy name of the Lord. The next offense is to consider the glories of the chanting of the holy name to be imagination. That yes, these Hare Krishna devotees, they chant and they dance and they look very happy and they seem to be conquering over the bad habits of their upbringing. They seem, someone might say, they seem to be becoming Brahmanas, Vaishnavas. But it is all imagination. It is just some self-hypnosis, some kind of bemused fascination. That is another offense. Aparad. Very serious. Then, next offense is to commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord. As we said, when one accepts spiritual master, then one receives Harinam initiation, Harinam Diksha, taking vow not to commit sinful activities. These fourfold sins of meat eating, illicit sex, and intoxication. But if someone thinks, anyway, chanting Hare Krishna is purifying, the scriptures say that if I chant God's name, I become cleansed of all sins, so this is a good business. I can sin, and then take the japamala and chant, and then I'm pure again. Or like some members of the Hindu religion, they say, in another way, they say, I can commit sins, but then I go every year to the holy river Ganga, take my bath there. Sometimes even Indian Brahmins from Brahmin families, they come to the West, and as my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada said, they come to the West and they eat everything. They follow the Chinese regulative principle. Any creature with its back to the sun is food. The principle of the Chinese. So it's been seen sometimes even Brahmanas come to the West and they accept this principle. And if someone says, but that is sinful, that is mahapap, that is very sinful. No, every year I go back to India, to Prayag, to Benares, and I bathe in the Ganga. And I wash, clean of all my sins. No, this is cheating. Similarly, in the West, the Western religion too, there's that cheating has become institutionalized in the form of confession. You sin all week, but then you go on Saturday to the priest. I did this, I did this, I did this. Mea culpa, yes. And then he gives some blessing. You're free to sin again for the next week. So this is aparadh. One cannot make spiritual progress by this. Then there's the offense of preaching to faithless persons, preaching the glories of the holy name to persons who have no interest, who actually have the propensity to blaspheme the holy name. So one should not do that. One should not simply not associate with such persons. That means we don't give them mercy. We give them some prasada and send them on their way if they will accept it themselves. We should not try to convince them when by their association we may be contaminated. Then one should not consider the chanting of the holy name to be some auspicious ritualistic ceremony which is simply meant to cultivate some mundane good in this world. Srila Prabhupada recalled when he was very, very young, just a small child, there was an outbreak of cholera in the city of Calcutta. So the epidemic could not be stopped by the usual medical undertakings. But then finally one Baba, one person, saintly person, he organized kirtan through every street of Calcutta, door to door. They were chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So actually, after this kirtan procession was held through the whole city, the epidemic faded away. So people thought, yes, by the power of holy name, Harinam, the holy name, this cholera epidemic has been stopped. But this is not the purpose of chanting Hare Krishna. You see, it's not that we should wait till there's some cholera epidemic. We do all nonsense our whole life, But when there's cholera epidemic or some other disaster, then we get a little serious. Oh, I better chant now. And then as soon as the problem is solved, enough Hare Krishna, let's go back to normal life. This is apara. And then finally, the 10th offense is to remain attached to conceptions of I, me and mine, despite having heard so many instructions from spiritual master, from the Vedic scriptures against this. Just to give an example, within the ISKCON movement, we also have positions. We have a structure, managerial structure, and there are positions. Some devotees take charge of other devotees. As the temple president, he's responsible for the activities of all devotees in his temple. And for that service, the temple president, or whoever it may be, requires a little more facility. He requires to have an office, perhaps a car, perhaps other things, in order to execute his duty. So there's no problem with that. As long as he remembers that all this facility is given to me by Krishna for his service. This office, this car, etc., whatever it may be, belongs to Krishna. Just like a government servant. He's also given by the government office, car, driver, servants. But they're in the employ of the government. All this is government property. So similarly, in ISKCON, everything is Krishna's. In ISKCON or outside of ISKCON. Anywhere, everything belongs to Krishna. But at least in this movement, the International Society of Krishna Consciousness, we are trying to remember that everything belongs to Krishna. We have to make that, bring that principle forward into our life. Set the example for everyone else. So if we fall into the trap of thinking, I, me, mine, that this facility actually belongs to me, and we try to enjoy it separately from Krishna, then we will fall back in our spiritual progress. So, these are the 10 offenses to the holy name of the Lord, which we are requesting our two initiates into Harinam, Bhakti, Susanna, Bhaktisene, to avoid these offenses now and forever. And as far as Sankarshan Das, he is taking second initiation, Vaishnava Brahman initiation, which is actually initiation into spiritual activity, into the activity of directly approaching the Supreme Lord and serving Him personally. The Vaishnava Gayatri Mantra consists of, has 7 parts, consisting of mantras for service to Guru, Gauranga, Krishna,